kind of cut into it, just so we can talk a little bit of current pop culture news. Have you been following the Titan diver story?
Yeah, I keep reading about it on accident. It's very
On accident,
interesting.
exactly.
It's definitely like the biggest thing that when I see it is like that is such a fear factor for me. Like I am not a fan of the water or like the really just like I like the water. I love to swim and all that jazz. But when it comes to like the ocean, I remember one
Yeah.
time I was in Hawaii when I was like 13 and we went snorkeling, but it was like or not snorkeling, but like just on a tour around the waters, seeing
Hmm.
like natural monuments. And they stop at a spot where you can dive down. There's like some coral underneath you, but it was like 300 feet below you, which was gorgeous. And I'm a good swimmer, so it's fine. But like, I remember I free dove like I don't know, maybe like 10 or 15 feet under the water to get a cool picture. And I was like, if I go any further, I am stuck. So
Well, that's the thing is like when you're just swimming alone, if you go any further, like you're gonna be caught by some underwater currents. Like,
yeah,
let alone, I mean, sorry, but I'm pretty positive they're all dead now. Correct? We can pretty much safely assume.
yeah,
I know that at this point we were waiting for like the oxygen to run out, but the likelihood of it imploding anyway, just because of the pressure that deep in like a janky makeshift submarine.
not to mention, like it, depending on what their depth was on their way back up, they still have to make stops for decompression. And with the amount of
Yeah.
oxygen they had left, even from yesterday's reports, like 10 hours or whatever,
Yep.
not enough time.
And that's like emergency reserve too for 5 people who are probably panicking, who have probably
Yeah,
already yelled and done it. What this, it's like terrifying to think of because like I was reading all those reports from the Coast Guard saying that they heard like banging sounds on intervals every 30 minutes. And like that would have been a protocol that one of the guys took to like try to make himself known, but it doesn't matter because like when today started, it was already too late because you have to go down and pick them up. And like,
yeah.
do we have the ability to do that? I mean, I imagine we do, but for
I
five
mean,
people,
it's gonna have to be like whatever their device they're using to get someone down there, they're going to have to send divers no matter what, which again require
right?
decompression breaks and again, depending on their depth, like even anything below 200 meters, like they're still going to be stopping for minutes at a time to make
Yeah,
their way up so they don't get hurt themselves.
it's so terrifying that like knowing, almost knowing full well that like as soon as you got stuck, as soon as something went wrong, if they didn't just implode, as soon as you know something went wrong, that's 5 people panicking.
Yeah,
Like, and you're just trapped in a minivan on the bottom of the ocean. It's
yeah,
brutal.
and essentially a tube-shaped porta potty. No thanks.
Yeah. But he did have one of those little like jugs that you could pee in, so it wasn't totally uncomfortable down there.
Mm.
Sure, that show is nasty. We can get more into the specifics of the Air Force as well soon too, but like the ocean in general, is that a I mean, have you ended up having to be on any like aircraft carriers? Like,
No, I do know some people who, like here specifically, who've been on aircraft carriers as like just it's weird. Like in the military world, whenever someone wants intel analysis done, they go to the Air Force just because we specifically train to do that versus like in the broad intel sphere that everyone does like collection is what most people are doing, which is good because that lets me do my job. But their job is to sit there and look at a sensor or listen to people like talking and translate it. They're not really putting anything together, so they're just to like make sure thing like they're in a safe area or whatever. That's pretty much it. And
so the
it's
aircraft carrier is really just like a launch pad for most.
for aircraft, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just there for the Navy to do their operations, but we have like you're essentially an Air Force liaison to like make sure that you're covering all domains of the world, not just the water.
Sure. Now, I guess now would be as good a time as any to talk specifically about what you do in the Air Force. And I'm sure I've already put a header at the start, but your official title is Staff Sergeant Joseph Ago, correct?
Yeah, I'm Staff Sergeant Safago. I am currently for one more day the non-commissioned officer in charge. So I'm basically like the mid-level manager kind of guy for our intelligence at the 356 Fighter Squadron at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. And so that is an F-35 squadron. So everything's brand new, squeaky, awesome. And it provides us a lot of opportunities to do a lot of cool stuff, especially with how important Alaska is, like just physically the location.
Yep.
So as we know, the Earth is round, right? I think
And
it's round.
geographically, from Alaska, Sarah Palin can see Russia from her house.
She did. She can't see. She's out there on a big old hill with a telescope. It's great.
Oh wait, she actually can.
But basically with the I guess I'm going on tangent right now. Alaska,
it's the A.D.H. deep dive, man.
The Earth is round. So the closer you are to the equator, it takes longer to go distances. However, when you're going north to south or south to north, and from different locations, it is the same distance going up and down. So
that's just interesting. I'm not great with geography, so knowing that is.
Yeah, so going north to south, like that's how we use to measure like nautical miles on aeronautical charts when we're doing like mission planning. We can literally just like, put our pinky or whatever on the chart and look at the, the minute markings and be like, okay, this is 10 miles away with extreme accuracy. So, being at Alaska, we can go basically anywhere in the world within an 8-hour workday, which is incredible because that, it's great and not great because we get to do a lot of cool stuff, but then we're also sent to do a lot of stuff.
It's sort of like if you can do it, that means you will be doing it. You will be moving around a lot.
Absolutely. So getting into what I do specifically. So by trade, I'm an intel analyst. So an all source intelligence analyst. So all source in the name meaning like I take all pieces of intelligence or information gathered and then put it together to make actionable intelligence. And so what that is used for is in a general sense for the job, you are allowing decision makers to make decisions, informed decisions. So, if I guess I'll use China as an example because they're our main focus in the Pacific. I'm in the Pacific Air Forces. If our commanders to make a decision at the base of what we're doing, I can be like, hey, our adversaries are planning to do these things. Geopolitically, they're doing these things. They trained this way. This is what we should be doing. Or I wouldn't tell him what we should be doing, but that will give him a notion of what we should be focusing on. And at the fighter squadron level where I'm at, it's the tactical level. People throw that word around a lot. They don't really know what it means, but there's 3 layers of organization. There's strategic, which is like very broad, all encroaching. Operational, which is more of like, think of it like a state operating, or like we have major commands. So it would be those levels, like a much smaller but still very large organization. And then tactical is at the unit level. So at the very bottom, like the people actually doing the thing is tactical. So my pilots are doing tactical stuff. They're actually in the air flying against.
Now it's not the correct term, obviously, because it's the Air Force, but the boots on the ground is that what you're saying? Like the tactical are the boots on the ground?
We're the front line of the Air Force. We don't hold guns, but we do, we are employing the means of achieving whatever objective we have to. So my role in that is to be an absolute expert, walking encyclopedia of adversary technology, their intentions with that technology and future technology, as well as their tactics and training. So let's just say, for example, at home, my job is not so much to build myself as an analyst. It is only to help build our pilots and make them smarter. Sure. So when we go into mission planning, one of the phases of it is they come up with their plan. I try to play devil's advocate the whole time and just throw wrenches in their plan the entire time. Just say like, hey, they can do this, or real world, this is what would happen. And I would look at like whoever is proctoring the entire mission, and they would go, yeah, can I swear?
Can I ask maybe a pointed question that might be more rooted in opinion than fact?
Yeah.
A lot of what you're doing, of course, is intel work. So the word spy doesn't necessarily apply because a spy would be kind of somebody masking as something and then gaining intel secretly. You're gaining intel while trying to remain completely anonymous at all times, always, Joe Safago. Is that correct?
While remaining anonymous? So
like you, Joe, are doing everything that you can to listen to intel without making yourself seen or heard. Is that correct?
No. So that's
okay.
not my job at all.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So that brings me back to the topic of intelligence collection.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are things like spies or human intelligence where we have people who, whether it's conduct interrogations or they, oh, how am I trying to say it? Like they will, say like someone comes up to them, there's like, hey, I know this information, and they usually do it for money. So they'll come
Oh,
forward and give up that information along with like satellite technology that provides us with signals analysis or signal information, imagery information, so on and so forth, like as well as like real people who were like in planes with headphones on translating stuff in real time. um
but you're
they
also communicating to those pilots, correct? Like you are.
I can't, if I was close enough I could communicate with the pilots in those planes, but during like say a deployment like with my own like F-35 pilots, I am able to communicate with them in real
Okay.
time, which is great.
Right.
It makes them feel happy.
Yeah, because you're giving them the data to make sure that their trip or mission or is a safe, well planned, well organized thing. Correct?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, if you think about it, like I look at it like chess. Like if you were going to play against someone and they used a certain opening every time, you'd probably want to know what opening they use.
Yep.
My job is to find that out and let you know that so you can train for it.
Which is kind of funny because for the listener, when I brought up to Joe that we were going to be doing a podcast, I said that I had a surprise for him, which initially was all planned out, ready to go. That has since fallen through. The surprise was going to be that a past guest, John Kelly, who's a mutual friend of ours and mutual coworker. We should talk about the theater soon. But John Kelly was going to pop in on the podcast, and I thought there's no way Joe will even like potentially think that like that's what it is. So I just said, I've got a surprise. And his first response was, is John Kelly joining the podcast? As if what you do is exactly that.
Yeah,
figure out what people are going to say and do before
I'm pretty
they
proud
do
of
it.
myself for that.
I was pissed.
I just had a weird feeling in my gut, like he would do something like that. Someone would come on. That would have to be the surprise. And now you're like probably like, oh dude, he's got like me bugged or something like that. There's someone binoculars and a parabolic microphone.
So why and I guess a lot of what I'm asking you is all opinion. You're not necessarily speaking on the behalf of any particular government or government entity. But first of all, why the Air Force? Like, it's not really something. Now, you and I weren't like best buds when we were in our elder teenage years, but like I guess I didn't see that coming for you. Is there a lineage of military service in your family, or?
Yeah, we have a lot. I have a lot of people in my family who've served. The closest, I guess, would be like my stepdad, who was in the Air Force in the '90s for I want to say like 5 or 6 years, and then my grandpa, who I grew up with for like half my life, like spent most of my childhood with him. He was in the Marines for 4 years, and then switched over to the Navy and was in for a total of 26 years. So,
Whoa.
but it was never something that was ingrained into me, like you need to be in the military or anything like that. Nothing like that at all. Like obviously I learned some of the, like, I guess, lessons of the military, like, just be organized, be orderly, do the right thing, like have integrity kind of thing,
Right.
at least from like, a real person's perspective of being in the military, but not like, it was never an option that I considered immediately going through school and like getting out.
Right.
Actually, the reason I like joined so late, like I joined when I was 20, so not super late.
Right.
You probably
Well, a lot of kids are being recruited like 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really weird to me, but I
agree.
I saw it in one of your previous podcasts, like you guys talking about like the issue of when you go to school, when you get to that like junior age, they're just pushing college hardcore.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's what it was for me. But unfortunately for me, I'm poor, so it's not like people to go to college. So if you didn't go to college, you were either too dumb or too stupid to go to college. And if you got a trade, you were just dumb. And if you went to the military, you were super dumb. So there was a lot of stigma attached with doing anything that wasn't going to college. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. Everyone was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to do this. I really like this niche topic. I'm going to do that. And no one's doing, like, there's probably a couple people who are actually doing what they want to do, but everyone always ended up moving back to something else that was either
or dropping out entirely.
more achievable. Yeah. And I went to school for a year and a half, and I got $10,000 of debt, and I hated it, and I was really lonely, and I was like, this is not for me. I need like a sense of purpose to do something with my life. So initially, when I had like kind of had that realization, I talked to one of my best friends at the time who was in the Marines, and he's like, "Dude, you should do it. The Marines are awesome." Blah blah blah. And like, spoiler alert, that's what every fucking Marine says when they're brand new. The Marines is not that great. The Marines is only good if you really like, just if you're like a masochist.
If
It's
you're a
not a
glutton
great.
for punishment, I was just gonna say it sounds like the worst, most excruciating. I'm quite frankly, like I'm not somebody who's a rah military, but the most thankless. I got to imagine.
Yeah,
Like,
you do it because you like being Marine.
right.
That's the most I can put it to. I mean, of course, there's a lot of pride and history that comes with like those guys, but that wasn't me. I was just trying to like find a purpose, or I guess initially I went to them because that's what they were putting on the table for me. I went to the Marine recruiters first, and they were like, "Yeah, man." Like, and they do this dumb thing where they like have a bunch of cards, like words they slide out that say like pride, integrity, leadership, like all these different like strong characteristics. They're like, "You will get these in the Marines," and you're like, "That is cool, but what can I do for a job?" And in my head, I was like, "I'm not that dumb. I can do intelligence. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do, was something in intelligence. I thought it was cool.
Okay.
I have an obsession with like getting past barriers to see things that other people can, like language learning. It's another barrier. That's something I'm also very passionate about. And I was like, I want to do that. And they were like, okay, here's this cool brochure of Marine jobs. And it was just all infantry jobs. And I was like,
Yeah.
mm. And
No, thank
then
you.
one day my stepdad was like, you should just try the Air Force, dude. Like, you're smart. You should go do it. And I was like, okay. So I went over there, took a practice ASVAB test, like your aptitude test. And they're like, you can do whatever you want. And I'm like, oh,
Great.
show me the
Well,
list of jobs.
that ASVAB is basically like, if what is it? The highest score is like 40 something. Is that correct? 30 something.
Now, the highest score you can get is a 99, and there's like four
Oh,
subject areas. But
I'm thinking.
the minimum to be able to do everything is like a 77 or something
Okay.
like that, or 72. So as
But
long as you score
essentially,
that,
is like once you get that score, they're like, here's the jobs that are available to you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
I
so
Go
go
ahead.
ahead,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I think there's a little bit of a time delay. We're dealing with that classic Zoom thing.
It's it's Alaska, man. The latency is amazing.
Sure.
But yeah, so after that, I was like, okay, I'm looking at these jobs. I don't know what I want to do still, but like, I see things that say intelligence, and I see like airborne cryptologic linguist. I'm like, oh, what's that? And they're like, you go learn a language, and then you fly in a plane and listen to people. And I'm like, I want to learn a language like for free. Hello, that would be super cool. And like the military supports you pretty heavily. Like they take care of everything for you. So that was another bonus too. Um,
Now, the
yeah,
can I actually pick up on that? Taking care
yeah,
of everything, especially because we'll kind of circle back to what you're actually doing or what you were doing, because now you're about to leave. Correct?
yeah.
Now, is this quote retirement, or what is this process actually?
This is separation. So like it's voluntary. I have an honorable discharge, which is really good.
That is good.
Yeah, it's like retirement would be like if you spent like your 20 years in and got your pension basically.
Right. So you were basically like, I'm good. I'm done. Like I did what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I basically just put in my 2 weeks.
I see. Because I was gonna ask. You said that like while you're in the military, while you're in an armed force, like you are taken very good care of. Obviously, your college is paid for. A lot of, I mean, your housing is taken care of, if I'm not mistaken. But then there's that fear of like what happens when you get out of the military, where a lot of the armed forces, or at least the VA itself, doesn't end up following up with service members very well.
Yeah.
But if you're leaving and not retiring, I guess I was going to ask, like, what is your fear of that next step? Like now that you don't have the military to fall back on.
Right. So it requires a lot of planning, and I was very like analytic when I came to this approach. I researched the crap out of everything, and I'm still learning new things every day about what I can and can't do for myself, or really more of what I can. There's a lot of things that open up for you. So I decided to make the decision at least a year ago. Like this is, my priorities have shifted in life. I want to be home with my family
Right.
more. That matters a lot more to me now than the job when, before having, especially before having a kid. Like
Yep.
these things matter to me more than the job. And so really it's just coming into looking at like what are your strengths and weaknesses, what can you do, what are your benefits, like your entitlements or whatever, and just being ready for it. Thankfully, a Leo works, so it's not like we're gonna be like scraping the bottom of the barrel or anything. We have a nice cushion
Right.
to land on when I get there. Um, and yeah, um, where was it going with that?
Well, I can kind of pivot you a little bit because
Yeah.
one of the questions I'm looking for is like, what is civilian life gonna look for you? Or sorry, what is civilian life gonna look like for you? You think like, are you worried about like I've had the same structure day after day? I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit different. It's not the same thing every day, but now you're switching into the role of fatherhood after having been, you know, hovered in the Air Force for what, 5 years now? No, you said
Six.
you joined when 20, so okay, yeah. Um, yeah, what's that process going to look like for you now? Like, are you worried at all? Are you nervous?
Of course, I'm nervous. The thing I'm most nervous about will be the future of like my son, like his
Mm-hmm.
education, who he's gonna be. I love being a dad. It's one of the most rewarding things ever. Every time I see Roland do something new, I'm just like, oh my god, like this is amazing. You were so smart. I love you. And really, the big thing for me is like I want to be, a better dad than my dad, which I guess wouldn't be too hard, but I want to be a really good dad.
Generational trauma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I want to give him everything he deserves and more. So really, it's just making sure that he grows up into a decent person and has the abilities to do what he wants, or not the same hindrances that I would have to achieve or do what I would want to do.
Sure. Was there, is there any, I'm sure the world will look significantly different in 20 years, but if your child tells you that they kind of want to pursue the same path of going into the armed services, is that something that you would try to steer them away from, or do you think that it helped you enough that you would incentivize them to maybe give it a shot?
I guess there's a few. It depends in there. This is like our favorite answer in the military and in intelligence. It depends.
Yeah.
I would say it depends on the current geopolitical climate. Like if I can smell, someone wanting to fight us, I would probably be like, dude, like if you don't get that sweet intel desk job or whatever you want,
Right.
you are in harm's way.
So just a minute ago, I actually said like I want to kind of ask you something that's more based on opinion, more rather than having you speak on anybody else's behalf. But I think maybe this is a more terms thing, so maybe the definition is just objective rather than subjective. Um, are we in? First of all, does the term proxy war apply to what we're in with Russia right now? And if so, what are the risks that that spills over into greater conflict with NATO?
So I guess in my own opinion, I would say yes. Um,
Yes.
and it's it's difficult to pinpoint how you feel about it. Like I guess I'll answer the questions first and get into how I'm feeling. So um, I would say yes, that term definitely carries over into this. Whether you're seeing it as a good thing or a bad thing, no
Right.
matter what way you look at it, like we're using Ukraine as a testing ground for our weapons, and so
Yes.
everyone else. So is Russia, the Iranians, everyone who's providing, you know, energy or conflict or whatever money, is pushing this to continue on. Unfortunately, and does that spill over into a future conflict? I would say, I mean, as of right now, it's really difficult to tell. Like the fighting right now is just a slog. It really just depends on how I would say in my opinion how threatened the Putin regime would feel before
Hmm.
anything would spill over into anywhere else. I know, like in the news recently, there was I think a cruise missile that the Russians launched, and it just somehow got past NATO air defenses and landed in Poland.
Oh, right, right.
um, that's a scary thought. Not only because like from depending on where that cruise missile launched, that's a very long distance. Usually they go pretty long distances, but also like it got through. So they're like
Right.
in the event that that could happen, it's totally possible for them to, especially with how degraded the air defenses of Ukraine are. But also the repercussions for Russia and anyone supporting Russia are immense.
Well, it's the end.
Yeah.
It's the my understanding is if Russia attacks a NATO ally directly in a show of legitimate force, then NATO will bring its full force
Yeah.
down on Russia.
I think with the other close calls we've had with Russia, I think still the approach would be very, I guess, cautionary. Like nobody wants to blow up the whole earth because, well, I mean, getting right into it, Putin just wants to take parts of Ukraine for more natural resources to keep his,
Right.
all eggs in a basket economy alive.
Well, it's to expand it, the actual like cultural. Sorry, the cultural history is that he's trying to rebuild the Soviet Union. Correct. Now, this is a Putin objective, but
there's a lot to it. But I mean, I would say, in my personal opinion, like the facts of the matter is that like the Donbass region and the Luhansk region, as well as like around even previously around Crimea. I mean, there's a very informative video on YouTube that someone did research on. But in these areas, there's a ton of natural resources. Not to mention, in the beginning of the war, people were talking about using Ukraine possibly based on these natural resources as a new, I guess, buffer between them and Russia, with them supplying the Europe with, natural resources, specifically natural gas, which they're heavily reliant on Russia for. So there's the fear of that, as well as propping up their own economy. Putin is obviously a Soviet Union sympathizer and would not, I mean, if you look at the other states aside from like the Balkans, Kazakhstan, Belarus, not Belarusia anymore. That's the Soviet Union name.
Yep.
Belarus,
Yep.
Armenia, Azerbaijan, all these places, the Caucasus. They pretty much bend to the will of Putin because Russia has the influence, like the regional influence and power to make them do that, and they don't have that much money or anything like that. So they're heavily reliant on him. So it's more of it's like a pseudo Soviet Union, but more or less it's everything just to hold Russia up high, like support Russia higher up, even though they have a lot of their own internal issues.
Well, and to be clear, I'm only parroting things that I have heard. Of course, you have more direct intel, but my understanding of the conflict in general is that like if you view it from the way that it's being communicated through like press secretaries and not from people's direct mouths, is that Russia, i.e. Putin, was afraid that NATO was closing in on its borders and it wanted to push back on that. And then by doing that, it pretty much strengthened the West more than or unified the West towards a singular opposition that no other thing has really done in the last few decades. And so Putin kind of just manifested his own next 20 years of hell because NATO's just going to be continuing to close in on Russia's borders.
Yeah, I'll say definitely it's not like some sort of like we're not out to get him. Like it would be amazing if we could all cooperate, but obviously we have different ideologies and ways of thinking, like as the West versus Russia or other nations that side with them. So,
well, do you actually believe that we're not out to get him? Now, I know you and me, Joe, aren't out to get Vladimir Putin, but the West would really like to see Russia's hand weakened.
Yeah, I would say with their current leadership and government, yes. Nothing is ever intended to hurt the people of the nation. That's the most unfortunate thing in all of this. Like the sanctions, people are suffering from that.
The people, not the government, not the wealthy executives. People were hurt by the sanctions. People are fighting the war, not.
Yeah, and so that's the worst part about it. No one wants to see Russia die. They don't want to see the culture and the history die. They want to see, people grow and prosper like they do in a lot of Western countries. In general sense, like they want people to, be in harmony, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sure. And I guess I kind of want to ask too, because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are more, if they're common listeners of this podcast, they're more familiar with the ADHD and the mental health side of things. But I want to talk about things that actually keep me up at night, which lead to military conflicts, or which are led by military conflicts. And I kind of want your expertise on or your insight into, with what's happening in Ukraine and Russia right now, is there reason to believe that something similar could happen soon with China invading Taiwan? Well, I will say that the reason I ask this is kind of a lead into like fears and anxiety. That one scares me more than what's currently happening in Russia and Ukraine, because that's more the way that we are financially tied to China and Taiwan, especially with the semiconductors in Taiwan, or maybe that's a Hong Kong issue more specifically, but both of them. I know that my geopolitics is not up to speed as much as it should be. I just know that a lot of shit's going down in Asia, and it's looking like it could continue to escalate in the way that this Ukrainian conflict is, should China get the balls to actually put boots on the ground in Taiwan.
Yeah. So the thing with Taiwan is that, again, it's more than just as we see, like historically, when the Soviets lost to the nationalists in China, or it was not the Soviets, the communists beat the nationalists in China. The nationalists fled to Taiwan, and then continued the Republic of China there, versus China, the country is the People's Republic of China. So I'll probably interchange with PRC, but that would just mean China. But
so what does CCP not stand then? Is that not what they are actually identified as right now?
So CCP is the Chinese Communist Party. That is the ruling body of China.
Oh, right. Which is Xi is a member of.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's I mean, really, the people that we don't like are the people in the CCP, because they're continuing the unfortunate strikes that happened in China. But China as a whole, wanting to take Taiwan goes far beyond, taking their lost, what did I say, or what do they call it, like renegade citizens or runaway people or whatever.
Well, this is the one China philosophy, correct?
Yes, and that's the biggest public way for them to justify it. And you got to remember, like, even though, like, I spent a lot of time seeing Chinese propaganda, and it's very cheesy and corny, and it's not so much to persuade us, it's more for the people of China. So, and even then, like, looking at their officials using social media, and they say some really stupid stuff, and then everyone just jumps on them. That's good for them, even if they look like total buffoons in front of us. The fact that they're standing up to the West and showing us what's up and not backing down, it's just more for the Chinese people to look at and be like, yeah, like, let's show it to them. They're bullies. They want to humiliate us, kind of thing. So outside of that's like the big public push for the people of China, is to get them on board with, like, we are going to bring China back to complete, I think they call it social harmony, and like in Mao's Little Red Book. They want to achieve total social harmony, and this is like their number one goal. That's been like that since the nationalists fled to Taiwan. There's that aspect. There's also the economic aspect. Taiwan is a very rich country for how small it is. Not to mention the semiconductor industry with TSMC. They produce like over 90% of the world's semiconductors. They're the most advanced semiconductors. Right. And it would be extremely valuable to another country trying to be the preeminent world power, trying to take our spot as, the world's superpower, to have that kind of technology available to them at all times. That's not to say that we're not trying to maintain our hold on that technology as well. However, Taiwan being a democratic country, as well as not wanting to end up like the people of China, as you've seen with like anyone who dissents from the government, how they get treated.
Yes.
Hong Kong, even the innocent Uyghurs in Xinjiang and Western China, like, they get probably the worst of it, and they're not even dissenting. They're literally just living their lives.
Well, and that's why I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about this as well, because there's in Russia, or in Ukraine, there's obviously Russian oppression on the Ukrainian people, but in China, there is oppression of its own people, the Uyghur Muslims.
Yeah.
And it seemed, and now this is I know nothing about this. Truly, I know nothing about this, so I don't want to speak for anything that is untrue, I guess. But like, could the term genocide be used for what's happening there, or is it not that extreme? I don't know.
Oh no, it absolutely is genocide. I'm gonna first throw out, before I forget, the very interesting document. So several years ago, the UN chief of human rights, I forget her name, began an investigation into the Uyghur rights issue, or not Uyghur rights, Uyghur labor camp issue
Uh-huh.
in Xinjiang, and it was a very thorough investigation. However, due to pressure from China on the UN, and especially her, was basically she didn't release it until her last day at that seat. At which point she did
Brutal.
release it, and I've kept a close eye on this topic specifically because I care. It really
Sure.
bothers me. Thinking that these people are being forced in the conditions that they are, and a lot of like what's in that document, if you've been following this topic, has laid out things that have been kind of whispered and rumored over the media over the past few years. But now this document is very more concrete as to what's occurring. And it's a horrendous situation. It's absolutely genocide. It's an ethnic genocide. And
Yes.
the issue, the big question everyone asks is why. Well, as we know, the CCP is obsessed with control and doing what they want. And I would say like I guess the big benefit to like so I guess this is a delineation we talk about a lot, but like Western governments or like democratic governments or societies versus autocratic societies like China. One thing that they have an advantage over us is like while we have more ingenuity and creativity, and they are able to they aren't as they have a hard time coming up with ideas, I guess is the best way to put it. But when they do have an idea or a concept, they can put just all their money, research.
They just do it. They don't need to pass legislation. They don't need to, stand on the House floor to like get amendments made to the bill. They just do it.
If Xi Jinping says, I want Coca-Cola flavored yogurt, they're going to make the best Coca-Cola flavored yogurt. I don't know. I'm something weird. I'm just trying to think of something weird. It's the first thing that came to my head. I don't know why, but like
the most innocent thing that
that's all he wants. That's all he wants is just different dairy treats.
He's just misunderstood.
Yeah. But that's the thing with them is they can pool all their resources and people and go for the stars with what they want to do. And so with a ethnically different group than the Han Chinese, which is the majority of Chinese people in China, mainland China, they don't work the same way. They don't have the same type of life. Everything is different. And China doesn't like that. On top of that, these people, the Uyghurs, are Muslim. Their majority religion is Muslim. And to China, that is scary. They don't, it's not like they're they're trying to fight the government. It's not like they are trying to overthrow anyone or do anything.
It's the thought that the idea of their religion could become a dominant thought in China.
As well as they just don't see that way of life clicking with the people in China, like with the government or the way of life in China. So that's their biggest push to end it. And they've done a lot of horrendous things to these people. Sterilization is one thing.
Yes.
Forcing Uyghur women into marriages with Han Chinese men. Obviously we know about their labor camps where they are forced to do labor. We talk about a lot about the Uyghur cotton fields that produce a lot of our favorite clothing. Nike, H&M, Adidas, so on and so forth. They're shaved, put into little uniforms, and they're forced to go to re-education camps as well, where they are taught how to be Chinese. They have to drop their native language and learn Mandarin. They're basically not only slowly eroding at this population like physically, but they're also getting rid of their culture.
Right. And what can be done? I mean, you can be as dreary as you'd like to be. Can anything be done about that from an outside force, or is that one of the things that a Chinese population would need to stand up against?
That would definitely be something that would have to be internally resolved. I would say, just because, again, China is a global trade partner. Everyone wants their industry,
right?
Cheap labor, so all that stuff, and nobody wants to kick that business too hard. Us as the United States, we've put sanctions. I don't know if that's sanctions is the right word, but we basically
tariffs.
Tariffs. We put a lot of fines on them for using cotton products, or companies that want to use those products. So that's just the biggest example. But like anything that could be possibly involved with Uyghur slave labor, we have tried our best to put a halt to that. But again, it comes down to everyone else too, because even if you take the U.S. out of the equation, they still have the rest of the world in their pocket.
We live in a free market society. I mean, the globe is being swept by varieties of capitalism at this point, where the dollar is more important than the morals, I suppose.
Yes, and just
Go ahead.
I would say, and despite being like a communist country, capitalism with Chinese characteristics is very brutal.
Well, it's just like we're not true. I mean, it's the Reagan philosophy of capitalism is great because it trickles down. Are you being rained on, Joe? I don't think so.
It's raining outside.
Yeah, well. Okay, so while we're, I guess, still in the China Russia proxy war conversation, was there any side of any of those legitimate conflicts that wanted you to get out of the armed forces? Or, I mean, of course, a big part of it was you're a father now, you want to be with your son, and but you wouldn't be blamed if seeing what's happening would be enough to push you out. Did it have any sort of weight on your decision?
Not really. I mean, it's a part of the job. Like you understand, like you signed the contract, you rose your right hand, you are there to defend America and its interests. And I mean, from my perspective, especially like the Taiwan losing in an invasion of China is a turning point for world history. Now I like it's a really tough subject, but really what I'm getting at is like I signed up to die for this country, and I believe in supporting Taiwan, like keeping them alive and not invaded. Whether Taiwan wanted to see or go back to PRC willingly, that's up to them. But in the case that protecting Taiwan would protect not only ourselves but also our allies in the Pacific, to include I mean, Hawaii is a part of us, but the Guam, all the islands surrounding that, Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, India, all these countries that we are pretty close with. I'm for that. It's a lot bigger than myself as well as the United States, but that wasn't something that if I got the call to get on a plane and get sent somewhere to do some things, I'm not gonna be running away or anything like that.
Well, you can't, because you would be arrested. Am I right?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I want to talk about that then, because as a person who doesn't, I mean, let's be clear, over the last at least 8 years or so, being a patriot or a proud American has a little bit of stigma attached to it. And that can certainly apply to people in the armed forces as well. Why do you think that it's still such a blessing to be an American? Because you seem like you have some national pride in that, we're America. We do what America is supposed to do. But I think there is a good amount of Americans now who look at America and say, we're just not who we were. And I'm not proud of that.
No,
what do you think about that?
I agree with that sentiment. I guess where my sense of national pride comes from is from my service, really. Because before I joined, I didn't care. It was I'm alive. It could be worse, but now I have met so many different people. Growing up in Cadillac, Michigan, the population at the time was 99.7% white. There isn't any culture outside of really just Michigan culture. And if people are comfortable living like that, that's fine with them. But after coming in, when I first coming into my boot camp training flight, over half my flight was black. That was the most amount of non-white people I had been with in a room, period. And I had an amazing time. It's eye-opening. I never had any prejudices or bad feelings towards any group of people or anything like that. But being around these people and these cultures and just the way that they live that was different than mine was so eye-opening, and it was so much fun. And I'm really thankful for that experience, and seeing that these people are around me, and seeing the people back home who call themselves patriots, and I understand I don't understand. I know the stigma that's attached with being a patriot, I guess, being negative, and seeing them treat other people, other whole human beings with experiences and lives, and love and care, treating them like they aren't people. It really hurts me. So I guess I see myself as a force of like positive, like good. I want to like continue pushing like these relationships that we can have, because it's healthy. It's good for all of us. People don't know what is out there.
I think that there are some semantics that maybe unfortunately have just been lost in translation throughout the years, like the difference between being a patriot and a nationalist.
Right.
Could you kind of explain, for the listeners, the greater difference between what it means to be a patriot and a nationalist?
Say that one more time. Sorry, these planes.
I was just going to say, could you maybe explain to anyone listening who doesn't know what the difference between a patriot and a nationalist is? Because a lot of people could see them as two sides of the same coin, even though there's some reason to believe that they're not. But what is your view on that?
So I guess I don't have a dictionary or anything in front of me or anything, but for the way I understand it, a patriot is someone who loves their country, who has a sense of pride for their country, like for their people, their achievements. I guess I would put it in a nationalist is a little more, it's a little too deep or egotistical, I would say, to a point of harm to other people. So I guess the first thing I think of when I think of nationalists, I guess aside from like Taiwan nationalists, but like the Germans, the Nazi Party, is the first thing that comes to my mind. They were extreme nationalists. They wanted nothing but only Germans, only the German Empire, and that was that.
The Aryan race.
If you were different, kiss your ass goodbye. That is not a patriot. That is a nationalist, and unfortunately, people that should not exist in this country. I mean that's kind of a ironic thing to say, but like that kind of mentality just stirs me the wrong way. I don't understand why, especially here when we have so many different people, we would ever want to push anyone out. Like,
especially when America had. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would say I've met people of all walks of life, and I've had an incredible time with all of them. And even knowing the stereotypes that people have given me, like in my head about people, like I never walked into like these meetings, people expecting that. But seeing how those are totally untrue, just blatant lies and attacks on these people, I don't understand how people can act this way and then still call themselves, a proud American.
Right. And when you look at America as the melting pot or whatever, and then you realize that so many people's families just 2 or 3 generations ago weren't even Americans. I mean, America is it's a very new, fresh country in terms of, the globe. I'm trying to figure out I have a really solid ending topic, but I don't think we're ready to go there yet. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to segue it out. But I guess let's talk a little bit more about this ending phase of the Air Force for you. What were some of I guess we can talk the whole trajectory of it. What were some of the biggest things that you were able to do that you can talk about right now? And big being like important to you as far as a job goes.
Important to me as a job goes. So, again, grew up in Cadillac, Michigan. Didn't do anything. Yeah. I left the state once. I had nothing going for me, and the fact that I originally went to Monterey to learn a new language. I'm already in an amazing place. I learned Russian. I graduated the Russian program. I actually learned that I have an auditory processing issue there, unfortunately. So they're like, "Hey, your whole job's listening. Get out of here." So I got switched
really?
into school.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Can you break that down a little bit?
So auditory processing, like when people are talking to me, it takes me a second to process it. And if I get stuck on something, I basically have to just guess what people are going to say. I have to do a lot of predicting in general as to what people are going to say so I can respond appropriately. Otherwise, I just end up saying what 100 times till I can understand you. So
is this just English, or is this what happened while you were learning Russian?
It's what I learned. It's what happened with Russian too. So
Okay.
While I can hear physically hear very well. However, when it comes to like another language, it requires a lot of brain energy to focus on it. And if
Yeah.
say the biggest trap would be like say there's a word you don't know, all of a sudden you're like listening and you're like, wait, what's that word? And you spend like 3 seconds listening to it, and you've just missed a sentence and a half. Now you don't know
Yeah.
what's going on, in a testing sense or in the exam sense. So um, that's kind of where they get you. Like I had a very high, I almost maxed out my reading and speaking scores, but my listening suffered just because of that processing issue. So unfortunate, but it happens, I guess.
Right.
But then,
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I thought you were stopping, so I was just gonna ask. I guess how, just to refresh what I was asking, how does that kind of tie into like some of the big, let's call them missions that you were able to do in the Air Force? Like, what did that lead to directly? Like some of the big things that you were able to accomplish.
Right. So I could just read my medal citation over there, but really the big things, I've been to all over the Pacific. Worked in Japan and Korea, which were both amazing places. We had individuals working in Guam as well, all doing like exercise as well as mission operations in the Pacific, towards the eastern side of the world, that were all very interesting. I was the intel lead for those, for the analysis and reporting of what occurred, as well as I also participated in the operation planning for an operation that occurred earlier this year in January, Operation Noble Defender, where I went to Canada with one of my pilots, and we basically planned out this mission to go to Thule Air Force Base, or Space Force Base, now known as Bidufik, in northern Greenland. It's like it's very close to the top of the world, and it was also a very different experience. Something like people would never ever see, just
Right.
due to how isolated it is.
When we're little Cadillac boys, So it's like we never thought we were gonna get to see that shit.
Yeah, I never thought that I would be sitting in a room with high ranking officials planning a mission and then actually
Right.
going and executing that mission as a sole intel dude. Like that's something that like you would think of like in a movie or like a book like that. Like doing that, especially at the rank I am, it gives credence to me, which is nice. But I'm not in anymore, so
Right.
who cares? But being able to say I did the thing and did it successfully, it feels really good.
Would it be okay if I actually read this medal certificate?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to say specifically what it says. Okay, so tell me a little bit before I read it here. How did this come to be? Did somebody come to your door and handed it to you? And these are your, how does one receive what I'm about to read here?
So typically, when it comes to awards like this or medals specifically, they are usually awarded for doing something very, I guess, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. So like if you like normally they're given awarded like the Air and Space Achievement Medal, which is it's like the lowest tier of medal, is usually given upon the end of a service at a certain base. So like I would like if I didn't do what I was doing, I would just get one nice piece of chest candy before I go to my next base, kind of thing.
Right.
But due to the actions I did do, I was bumped up to the Air and Space Commendation Medal, which is really cool.
Right.
Because going up those tiers of medals is very tough, because the higher you go, the more extreme the air actions must be, like risking life and
Right.
limb, being put in a very dangerous situation is usually what is a result of getting those, as well as like looking at the individuals who do very important missions, looking at like the Afghanistan refugee transit or whatever. The air crews that worked on those passenger aircraft to move refugees out of Afghanistan received medals for their efforts, because it was a very hectic situation, and it wasn't an emergency and time sensitive. So things of that nature usually get you those spontaneously. But this is what I received upon the end of my service as a result
All
of my
right.
actions.
Let's read it. From the Department of the Air Force, this is to certify that the Air and Space Commendation Medal has been awarded to Staff Sergeant Joseph F. Safago for meritorious service on the 14th of July 2020 to the 27th of June 2023. The accomplishments were that Staff Sergeant Joseph Safago distinguished himself by meritorious service as non-commissioned officer in charge. F-35 Fighter Squadron Intelligence, 356th Fighter Squadron, 354th Operations Group, 354th Fighter Wing, Eielson Air Force Base, Alaska. During this period, Sergeant Safago delivered critical intelligence preparing 49 F-35A pilots for real-world operations across the United States, Indo-Pacific, and Northern Commands. Additionally, he oversaw 4 security manager programs and completed the squadron's wing security inspection, accounting for $23,000 of classified information systems and clearances for 58 squadron personnel. Furthermore, Sergeant Safago led intelligence analysis and reporting for 5 dynamic force employments. Liaising? Is that right? Liaising? Liaising with the 4th and 5th generation fighters in Japan, Guam, the Republic of Korea, intelligence service, and reconnaissance assets, and a Navy cruiser serving in the Indo-Pacific, thereby ensuring successful operations within the first island chain. Finally, as the sole squadron analyst for Operation Noble Defender, he coordinated with the North American Aerospace Defense Command, United States Northern Command, and Royal Canadian Air Force, ensuring the deployment of 4 F-35As to combat threats to our national security, strengthening both countries' national defense and promoting our continued partnership. The distinctive accomplishments of Sergeant Safago while serving his country reflect credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. And then given under my hand, it's got your Lieutenant Colonel there. Now, when that's being read back to you, how does that make you, like, feel? Not to put you on the spot, but, like, do you recognize the accomplishment there, or is there kind of like a... Because let me project here and say that anytime I receive any sort of accolades or praise or whatever, I get extraordinarily uncomfortable and I minimize it. Do you minimize your actions, or do you recognize how serious they were?
I definitely recognize those things. So early on in my service, like, again, I have a good work ethic and I do try really hard to be good at what I do, and I am. I had a lot of difficulty taking compliments because I thought people were just saying it because, again, you do hear, like, they want everyone to succeed, and the first step in doing that is trying to I guess push everyone up, keep their spirits high, don't let them give up, emotionally, mentally. And so when you try really hard, you do execute something very well, and the guy next to you who, like, can't even make his own bed, like, you see, it's just like, he's a boot camp example, can't even make his own bed, and they're like, hell yeah, trainee, blah, 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 like, you're killing it. And it's like, they're not.
I made my bed.
For a long time, I even coming to this base too, I didn't acknowledge those compliments just because, like, okay, yeah, everyone's smart, everyone did this right, everyone did that, like, that's what's expected of us, like, like, who cares? Like, I would get this even if I did nothing. But when it came to, like, specifically what's listed in this, they're unique to me. These are things that I myself did, with either alone or with some support, and I'm proud of that. Like, these are things that no one else at Eielson Air Force Base has done, and it's very unlikely that anyone else in the military will be doing those kinds of things unless there's a repeat of these missions. So I take full credit for those, as well as everything else that's not listed for obvious reasons. I own those because that's what I did. If I could, if I were to put a name on something in my service, it would be those right there.
To what degree is there still, I mean, obviously you can't talk about it, but you've been involved in many classified situations. How many of those still linger in your mind only that you can't actually talk about?
There's quite a few that just...
Or is that itself classified?
There's quite a few that swirl around in my head, but, I know what happened, and it still feels good, even though I can't, I guess brag about it is a way to put it, or like put it on a piece of paper.
Sure.
I know what I've done, and I know that I did it better than anyone else could,
Hell yeah.
and I'm proud of being able to, whether it comes to like ensuring that our guys are safe, are smarter, better pilots, whether it comes to knowing that someone is safe, like getting them home. That's one thing that is listed on there. A lot of like the non-job things. I did a lot of that as well, um, as well as like I guess those are the two things. Like I know what I've done, and I know that they are impactful, and I'm thankful that I've had that.
Well, that's good because I mean, I don't know any personally, but there are, of course, endless amounts of stories of people who leave the military going, what was that? What was all that for? Why did I do that? And a lot of that is combat veterans who feel maybe a lot of guilt and shame for what they had to experience. But like, there is a subset of people who look at their service, and especially, you don't even have to look at what's going on right now. You could look so far back as like what happened in Vietnam, when people came back and were treated terribly because they fought in a war that the American people didn't want, and a lot of that goes unrecognized and unseen and unheard and unnoticed. So it is important, at least for the sake of the mental health side of things, to be able to properly praise yourself, because sometimes we need that, and it's not going to come externally.
Yeah, one thing I guess that they're onto that too is, I guess if I was in the situation of say like a Vietnam veteran or someone who is really in the shit, like killing someone is a really difficult thing for me to think about, and
Sure.
it's kind of like it like sucks to say, but like I'm not the one holding the gun, so I don't have that association with the military. My main job is to keep our pilots safe.
Right.
It's to prepare them for the mission ahead, and I guess I kind of look at it as sort of a like uh it's more of a supportive role than offensive. Like my job isn't really to tell them what to like. I'm not telling them to destroy equipment or whatever or buildings. I'm there to say like there are these threats out there. This is what you need to do. Um, so it's very like defensive in nature versus like if I was out there with a gun, or if I was a pilot, I don't really know how I would feel if I had to kill someone.
Sure.
Probably not good at all. But there's that delineation there too between like now and then.
Well, we can lean away from war and talk about what I think is maybe one of my favorite topics in the world to talk about, that I think you might be able to provide some fun insight about. I'll ask more specific, pointed questions in a second, but I'm just going to lob a phrase out to you, and I want you to kind of take your improvisational skills and go with it where you may.
Okay.
Aliens?
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 Oh,
Take it
man,
away.
dude.
Unless
Oh
you want me
man,
to be more specific, because I could happily get more specific.
I can talk about aliens for a second. So actually, that's like our big joke. As soon as we get into our intel school, we're in a secret environment, and the first question that anyone asks to our instructors is, "Dude, aliens? Like, where them aliens at?"
Yep.
Unfortunately, we don't have anything on aliens, or at least I wouldn't have access to the aliens.
You wouldn't have access.
Yeah, it's funny though. Whenever I'm on an operation, I'll give a back brief to like our maintainers and stuff, just to give them like a what's up as to what we're doing and why we're here. And every time I'm like, "Does anyone have any other questions?" And they're like, "Aliens." I'm like, "That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Shut up."
There's a there's well, go ahead if you're going to continue. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
So I don't know to what degree I am what I would call, I don't even know how to word it. I am on the cusp of being a little too far gone with that stuff, that like I have engaged in the theorizing, especially since that leaked document came out in 2017. If I'm not sure you're familiar with that, essentially, I don't remember what branch. No, it was just the Pentagon was in possession of crafts that were not made of this earth. It was a leaked document. And again, this is the thing. It might not be real, okay? What the issue with the alien thing, when I look at it from a military point of view, is the opportunity for psyops and how easily I think that could work on a susceptible population that doesn't really understand the technology that we have out there, right? And the aliens thing, just because, of course, I'm a dude who wants to believe. I also believe that it could be possible that a handful of people are part of a special, secret, completely hidden, next level classification burying of the fact that we have alien technology so that our adversaries don't know or try to get a hold of it or whatever. However, if that's really been going on since the 40s, how do we not know as a populace yet? And I just wonder, A, are you willing to believe that the military or the Pentagon itself has the capability to hide something like that for as long as it is theorized to have been hiding it? And B, do you think they're here to begin with?
So, do I think the Pentagon could hide anything, especially like something with aliens? No.
Okay, that's
I
fascinating.
I don't think they could hide it. I know that with ever since like the Roswell incident and the production, like Skunk Works, the production of like high tech aircraft back in the 60s and 70s up until now, aliens have kind of been a pain in the ass for the government and the Air Force, because we're just trying to make super cool, highly advanced, stealthy planes in the middle of a desert. Please leave us alone. They're not aliens. And then everyone's like, dude, that flying fucking Dorito, that is an alien. Even though I took a bunch of PCP last night and blacked out in the middle of the desert, I was abducted. Like, sure. I'm just joking, but like,
I get you.
It's definitely been like a stigma in like for the government and the military, like aliens, just because it's like we're trying to develop technology and then someone sees it and they like, we're not going to tell them like this is a secret plane.
Right.
So it's easier for them just to let it go. But at a certain point too, like I think people eventually will need to know things. But as far as I know, no aliens or alien technology. We wish we had that. I mean, I can say the F-35, F-22, like knowing the insides of those things, very spectacular, way like a whole different caliber compared to other aircraft in the world, especially compared to, excuse me, our adversaries, their 5th gen jets. But alien technology in there, our guys wish. I want to believe in aliens too, though. I think it is something. Hopefully, we could see in our lifetime. But again, I've worked with the unidentified aerial phenomenon cell that works out of like DC. And
you have.
We're just looking and looking and looking, and everything is impossible to tell. Like, is an alien, is it not? Is this floating Dorito on the scope of a Navy Hornet mean anything? I don't know. Is it broken? I don't know. It's a whole convoluted mess, and I will probably never know in my life unless something gets spilled on the news.
See, that is the one thing that I don't know if it's an optimist, because I don't know if the world knowing that aliens are here or that they've been here, I don't know if that's, I think it's good for humanity, but I don't know if it's good for civilization right now or society. I think that could cause legitimate panic in a way that, especially for some people whose religious identity aligns with the complete antithesis of like the existence of aliens, like it would be impossible for aliens to exist under this particular worldview, and if this particular worldview is shattered, things could go awry. But what I'm willing to believe is that they are here, but that they sort of always have been, in a way that our dumb little ape brains can't. Like, if they are here, they're millions, if not billions of more years advanced than us. They could be fourth dimensional beings for all we know. I just don't think that we have the capacity to interact with. If something was able to make its way to Earth, it is far more advanced than we are. And so, for me to think that it's some fleshy green thing, it's more likely that it is a type of AI or something that we can't understand right now, than to believe that a handful of people in the Pentagon have been keeping secrets for a few generations and they're all going to die with it.
Yeah.
It seems like the level of masking your own narcissism, masking your own ego to not want to tell anybody that, like, I know aliens are here. It seems unlikely that somebody could keep that secret.
Yeah,
So,
it would be very difficult. I think the repercussions would have to be like death to keep someone from talking about that.
Yeah, there is
And even
are you familiar with the Jimmy Carter story when it comes to aliens?
you might have to jog my memory.
I'm not extremely familiar with all the specifics, but essentially, Jimmy Carter wanted to know, and Jimmy Carter's also a devout Christian. Jimmy did some pushing and prodding and got some sort of information, enough so that he was weeping publicly in the Oval Office for 2 days and stopped taking meetings and phone calls because of what he learned. Now, what he learned, we don't know. What he learned could be, we're the only ones. And that's quite sombering to believe that we might be the only things that exist in this universe, let alone the possibility of a multiverse. But I like to believe that staunch Christian Jimmy Carter heard that we've been visited since the beginning of time, and that just shocked him to his core, because I like to believe that they're here. But that's all I got on aliens. I don't know if there's any classified information you can bring to the table in that regard.
I wish I had some, but unfortunately, I think I'm just as far as anyone else right now with knowing alien stuff or anything like that.
So you're hopeful, but skeptical.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, as far as like bullet point notes, those are the main things that I wanted to get to. Is there anything that you want to kind of bring up, discuss, shoot the shit about? Anything that you feel like you didn't have the opportunity to talk about that you would like to?
I don't have anything off the top of my head. I'll have to think for a second. If you have anything else too, I'll be thinking in the back burner.
Sure. And there's, like I told you before, there's an opportunity for you to come back on. I just have things scheduled out farther. I've wanted to have you on for a while anyway. I just wanted to make sure that there was like the proper way to talk about it, because when you're involved in a military or wing of the military, there's some things that like you'd either you can't talk about or you'd rather not talk about because it's just your day to day anyway. But I figured now that you're on your way out, this is an exciting next step of your life. And I don't know if are you comfortable saying that where you're moving back to? You don't have to say the city, but you're like at least coming back home, correct? To Michigan?
Yeah, I'm coming back home.
Yeah. When is that happening?
So tomorrow is my final out day, so it's the last day I'll wear my uniform. And then my cousin's flying up from down south, and we're going to drive out of here on the 25th. So we're going to drive into Canada, get some Timmies, drive over the Northern Rockies, make a good turn at, I think it's Edmonton in Alberta, and has entered the U.S. through South Dakota, and then, or North Dakota. Sorry, South Dakota would be weird. Be a big ramp.
Yeah, just coming back.
And just head straight east into the UP and drive down the bridge. So it's going to be a sick drive. I'm planning on taking the summer off. Going to the beach with my son every day, dude. Oh, I can't wait. I've gone swimming like twice since I've been in, and I miss it so much. So,
is your wife and son with you still in Alaska right now?
No, they're in Michigan. They left on the 11th just to get settled in and move some things over there too. And obviously,
but you've got the new place already.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The big reason for going back to is having that support network there, and so getting our son used to like our family, because the last time he saw them, he was like not even crawling.
Right.
So it's really good for them to go do that. And I was like, yeah, like please go hang out with everyone. I'll just
Oh
chill
yeah.
here. And I thought it would be kind of nice to have some alone time. You know, Ali and I are very individualistic. We like to have our alone time, but goddamn, like more than more than one day of not hearing my son yell or play or whatever, like hanging out with Aaliyah, like it sucks, dude.
Yeah. Well, and especially if that's like one of the main reasons that you're prepared to leave the Air Force is so you can move into this role of fatherhood. Like I can only imagine that like you're just ready to go.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's one of those things. Last night I actually was going through my snap memories of like old pictures of Roland, and I was like on the verge of crying the whole time. I'm like, I miss him so much.
Well, hey, this has been fun. A, catching up, but B, just like learning about a lot of this stuff because I wanted to know a little bit more about what you do. And now that you're moving to where you're moving to, I won't say the city specifically, but I think that I do know. Actually, I'm going to beep it. You're moving to Traverse City, correct?
No, South.
Where?
I'm just going back to Cadillac.
Oh, you're going to Cadillac? I thought you were going to Traverse City.
No. I'm going to Cadillac for now.
Oh, fuck yeah. All right, cool. Well, all that will be beeped anyways. I'm up north all the time, so I'd like to see you face to face when you get back.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm hoping to be back around the 4th of July, hopefully.
Cool. That's
just
a real
because,
fucking
like,
patriot, man.
yeah, no, I just want to because everyone will be off and I can like see everyone without having
Right.
to fight schedules and everything like that. But
Right.
yeah, barbecue, God bless America, whatever.
Yeah, America. Hey, I don't think I've ever said this to anybody and meant it. Thank you for your service, buddy. I really,
damn it, you mother.
I know.
Thank you for your support.
Does that feel strange to be like, okay, thanks? Okay, yeah.
It is always a weird thing because like now I guess now towards the end I can feel a little bit from it, but like when you're in, you know, you're like on your day to day, you're like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? I just got done taking a you know, my 5th bathroom break for the day and
Right.
then going to check my email, or not like I wouldn't say it's like that bad, but like
But still, you
you're
get
just
used to
doing
your job.
Yeah, you wouldn't look at someone who's like, you wouldn't go to a hotel and be like, "Hey, thank you so much for doing what you do." It would be kind of like weird, or like
Maybe we should.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of like any other job. You wouldn't just be like you wouldn't just go up to someone just going about their day and being like, "Hey, you are doing something amazing. Thank you." Like
Thank you.
like that's like the intent behind like a lot of people saying thank you for your service. Like especially with civilians, it's very much like you were doing incredible things. You were keeping America safe, and it's like I just sent an angry email to someone who didn't turn in their security paperwork to me on time.
Well, if they didn't turn it in
So
on time, or you got, never mind. Fuck it. I was gonna say you're doing a good job. Okay. Well, I'm not taking it back. Thank you for your service, and thank you
dude,
for
thank
being
you.
on the podcast. And you know, shit, man, we didn't even talk about the movie theater. We'll have to just do that another day because we have a really
Okay.
we have a fun origin story. We'll just shoot it out. Joe and I met at a movie theater, right? We met there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we both worked together at a movie theater when we were like, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. Just
Yeah.
little kids. Just about 10, I mean, just a little over 10 years ago at this point, and my, how much has changed.
Yeah,
It's insane.
definitely.
Well, hey, buddy, I love you. It was so good to see you. Thank you for being on. And
Yeah, thank
unless
you.
unless there's anything you can think of, we can cut.
Okay, yeah. Let me
Okay.
know when you're in town.
Yeah, let me hit stop on the podcast, and then you hang out on the line so I can actually say a proper goodbye. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.